Captain Elena Rodriguez stood perfectly still in the doorway of the Strategic Operations Command Center at Fort Braxton, watching as Colonel Marcus Thompson crumpled her meticulously prepared battle plan into a ball and tossed it toward the wastebasket. It bounced off the rim and rolled across the polished floor, coming to rest near her polished combat boots. The room fell silent except for the low hum of computer servers and the distant sound of helicopters conducting training exercises outside. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. This is what happens when we let desk jockeys play war games, Thompson announced to the room full of senior officers, his voice carrying the kind of casual cruelty that comes from years of unchallenged authority. Captain Rodriguez here thinks she can revolutionize modern warfare with flowcharts and computer models. The assembled officers chuckled on cue, their laughter echoing off the concrete walls adorned with tactical maps and unit commendations. Maybe you should stick to filing reports and leave the real strategy to those of us who've actually seen combat. Elena's hazel eyes remained fixed on Thompson's face, her expression giving nothing away. Her shoulder-length dark hair was pulled back in regulation style, and her uniform was crisp and perfectly pressed. Nothing about her 5'6" frame or quiet demeanor suggested the storm brewing beneath her calm exterior. For just a moment, her gaze flickered to the small rectangular outline visible through her shirt pocket, the outline of a classified commendation letter she'd never shown anyone at Fort Braxton. They had just dismissed the wrong strategist. The morning air at Fort Braxton carried the familiar mixture of diesel fuel, fresh coffee, and anticipation that defined military installations across the globe. Elena Rodriguez had learned to find comfort in these scents during her 8 years of service, though lately they served more as a reminder of how far she felt from belonging anywhere. At 31, she had built a reputation as one of the Army's most analytical minds, specializing in asymmetric warfare strategies and unconventional tactical approaches. Her small apartment in nearby Fayetteville reflected this methodical nature, everything in its place, a single bookshelf lined with military history texts and strategic theory, and a modest desk where she spent countless hours refining her approaches to modern combat scenarios. Elena had grown up in a military family, though not in the traditional sense. Her father, Colonel James Rodriguez, had been a decorated intelligence officer who spent more time analyzing enemy movements from secure facilities than leading troops into battle. From him, she inherited both an appreciation for the subtle complexities of warfare and an understanding that the most effective strategies often came from unexpected angles. Her mother, Maria, had been a civilian contractor specializing in logistics coordination, teaching Elena that successful operations depended as much on efficient resource management as they did on tactical brilliance. The combination of these influences shaped Elena into an officer who saw warfare as a complex puzzle requiring creative solutions rather than brute force applications. While her peers focused on conventional approaches to military problems, Elena developed a reputation for identifying vulnerabilities and opportunities that others missed. Her analytical mind could process vast amounts of tactical data and identify patterns that escaped notice during traditional planning sessions. More importantly, she possessed an intuitive understanding of how seemingly minor adjustments to standard procedures could yield dramatically improved outcomes. This talent for unconventional thinking had served her well during her early career assignments. As a lieutenant stationed in Germany, she had identified logistical inefficiencies that were costing her unit significant time and resources during training exercises. Her proposed solutions, initially met with skepticism, ultimately reduced equipment downtime by 40% and earned her recognition from senior command. During a deployment to Eastern Europe, her analysis of local terrain features led to the discovery of previously unmapped supply routes that, proved invaluable for humanitarian operations in the region. However, Elena's greatest professional achievement remained classified at the highest levels of military intelligence. 3 years earlier, while serving as a strategic analyst attached to a joint task force in Afghanistan, she had identified a pattern in enemy communications that suggested an imminent large-scale attack on coalition forces. Her analysis indicated that traditional defensive preparations would be insufficient, and she proposed a complex redeployment strategy that would position friendly forces to not only repel the attack, but potentially eliminate a significant portion of the enemy network. The operation, later designated as the Kandahar Incident in classified documents, had been a complete success. Elena's strategic recommendations were implemented precisely as she had outlined them, resulting in the neutralization of a major threat, with minimal coalition casualties. The enemy forces, expecting to encounter predictable defensive positions, instead found themselves caught in a carefully orchestrated tactical web that dismantled their operational capability in less than 6 hours. The success was so complete that it became a case study in advanced strategic planning, though Elena's role remained known only to a small circle of senior intelligence officials. The commendation letter in her pocket, signed by a 3-star general whose name was redacted from most documents, represented official recognition of her contribution to the operation's success. The letter praised her innovative strategic thinking and exceptional analytical capabilities that directly contributed to the preservation of American lives and the advancement of coalition objectives. However, the classified nature of the operation meant that Elena could never publicly acknowledge her role or use the achievement to advance her career in conventional ways. This limitation had proven increasingly frustrating as Elena found herself assigned to Fort Braxton Strategic Operations Command Center 18 months ago. The facility was tasked with developing and testing new tactical approaches for future military operations, making it seemingly perfect for someone with Elena's analytical capabilities and unconventional perspective. The reality, however, had proven far more complicated than Elena had anticipated when she received her assignment orders. Fort Braxton operated under the command of Colonel Marcus Thompson, a career officer whose military philosophy emphasized traditional approaches and established hierarchies. Thompson had built his reputation during conventional operations in Iraq, where his ability to execute standard tactical procedures with precision had earned him multiple commendations and steady advancement through the ranks. His leadership style reflected his background: direct, authoritative, and deeply suspicious of approaches that deviated from proven methods. Thompson's attitude toward Elena had been cool from her first day at Fort Braxton, though initially she attributed this to the natural adjustment period that came with integrating into a new command structure. She soon realized, however, that Thompson's reservations went deeper than typical new assignment protocols. During staff meetings, he would frequently interrupt her presentations with questions that seemed designed more to highlight potential flaws than to understand her recommendations. When she proposed alternative approaches to training scenarios, Thompson would often defer to more senior officers whose suggestions aligned more closely with conventional wisdom. The dynamic became more pronounced during Elena's first major assignment at Fort Braxton, developing contingency plans for a hypothetical urban warfare scenario. Elena spent weeks analyzing the tactical challenges presented by the simulation, eventually producing a comprehensive strategy that emphasized flexibility, local intelligence gathering, and adaptive response protocols. Her approach challenged several assumptions underlying traditional urban combat doctrine, instead proposing methods that would minimize civilian casualties while maximizing operational effectiveness. Thompson's response to Elena's presentation had been swift and dismissive. During the formal briefing, he questioned her assumptions, criticized her methodology, and ultimately rejected her recommendations in favor of a more conventional approach. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, So if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. Developed by Major Stephen Walsh, one of Thompson's longtime associates. The rejection stung not only because Elena believed her strategy was superior, but because Thompson's critique focused more on her relative inexperience in combat, leadership roles than on the substance of her tactical analysis. Following the urban warfare assignment, Elena found herself increasingly marginalized within Fort Braxton's command structure. Thompson began assigning her to routine administrative tasks that made minimal use of her analytical capabilities, reviewing equipment inventories, coordinating training schedules, and preparing standard progress reports that required little strategic thinking. When opportunities arose for officers to participate in advanced planning sessions or tactical development projects, Elena found herself excluded from consideration, despite her qualifications and enthusiasm for such assignments. The isolation extended beyond professional responsibilities into the social dynamics of the base. Thompson's attitude toward Elena influenced how other officers interacted with her, creating an environment where questioning her competence became acceptable and supporting her ideas seemed inadvisable for career advancement. During informal gatherings at the officers' club, conversations would often shift when Elena approached, and her colleagues would offer polite but distant responses to her attempts at professional discussion. Lieutenant David Kim proved to be one of the few exceptions to this pattern. A recent graduate of West Point with a background in computer science and systems analysis, Kim recognized the value of Elena's unconventional approaches and often sought her input on technical challenges he encountered during his assignments. Their professional relationship developed into a cautious friendship, though Kim was careful to avoid appearing too closely associated with Elena during formal interactions when Thompson or his supporters were present. Kim's support provided Elena with valuable insight into the broader dynamics affecting her position at Fort Braxton. Through their conversations, she learned that Thompson's resistance to her ideas stemmed partly from philosophical differences about military strategy and partly from personal concerns about maintaining his authority within the command structure. Several officers had privately expressed appreciation for Elena's analytical capabilities, but none were willing to challenge Thompson's assessment publicly or advocate for her inclusion in more significant projects. The situation reached a turning point during Elena's 6th month at Fort Braxton, when she submitted a detailed analysis of the base's emergency response protocols. Her review had identified several potential vulnerabilities in the procedures, designed to protect personnel and resources during various threat scenarios. Elena's recommendations included specific modifications to communication systems, personnel deployment patterns, and resource allocation procedures that would significantly improve the base's defensive capabilities. Thompson's response exceeded even Elena's expectations for dismissiveness. During a staff meeting attended by all senior officers, he used Elena's report as an example of overthinking simple procedures and suggested that her academic approach demonstrated a fundamental misunderstanding of practical military operations. He concluded his critique by stating that Fort Braxton's protocols had been developed by experienced combat veterans and needed no revision by officers whose primary qualification was sitting behind computers. The public nature of Thompson's dismissal sent a clear message to everyone present about Elena's status within the command hierarchy. Several officers who had previously shown interest in her ideas became noticeably more distant in subsequent interactions. Requests for her input on planning exercises stopped entirely, and she found herself assigned to increasingly routine responsibilities that seemed designed more to keep her occupied than to utilize her capabilities effectively. Elena's response to this treatment reflected both her professional discipline and her growing frustration with the limitations of her current assignment. She continued to approach her duties with the same attention to detail and analytical rigor that had characterized her previous successes, But she also began developing independent projects that would demonstrate her capabilities regardless of official recognition. During her off-duty hours, she researched emerging threats and tactical challenges facing modern military forces, producing detailed analyses that she hoped might eventually find receptive audiences outside Fort Braxton's command structure. These personal projects included a comprehensive study of cyber warfare integration with conventional military operations, an analysis of logistics challenges in humanitarian assistance missions, and a detailed examination of communication protocols during multi-unit operations. Each study demonstrated Elena's ability to identify complex problems and develop practical solutions that balanced multiple operational considerations. More importantly, they represented her determination to continue growing professionally despite the constraints of her current assignment. The quality of Elena's independent work eventually attracted attention from unexpected sources. During a regional conference on military innovation, Elena submitted a paper on adaptive, tactical communications that was selected for presentation, despite her relatively junior rank. The presentation generated significant interest from attendees, including several senior officers from other installations, who requested copies of her research for review by their own strategic planning teams. Thompson's reaction to Elena's external recognition was predictably negative. Upon learning about her conference presentation, he called Elena into his office for what he termed a clarification of priorities. During the meeting, Thompson made it clear that he expected Elena to focus her efforts on assigned duties rather than pursuing independent projects that might create confusion about Fort Braxton's official positions on tactical matters. He also suggested that seeking recognition outside normal command channels demonstrated poor judgment and potentially undermined unit cohesion. The conversation marked a new low point in Elena's relationship with Thompson, but it also strengthened her resolve to prove the value of her unconventional approaches to military strategy. She realized that changing Thompson's opinion would require more than scholarly presentations or theoretical demonstrations. It would require an opportunity to show that her methods could produce superior results in practical applications. Until such an opportunity arose, Elena would need to maintain her professional standards while preparing for the moment when her capabilities might finally receive appropriate recognition. That opportunity would come sooner than Elena expected, though in circumstances that would test not only her strategic abilities, but also her capacity to maintain composure under pressure. The geopolitical situation in Eastern Europe was deteriorating rapidly, with intelligence reports suggesting that American forces might soon be called upon to respond to emerging threats in the region. Fort Braxton had been designated as a primary planning center for potential operations, meaning that the strategic approaches developed there could directly influence how American forces would engage with real-world challenges. Elena understood that the upcoming planning sessions would represent her best chance to demonstrate that unconventional strategic thinking could produce superior results compared to traditional approaches. However, she also recognized that Thompson's attitude toward her ideas had only hardened over time, making it unlikely that her contributions would receive fair consideration through normal channels. The challenge would be finding a way to prove her capabilities, despite institutional resistance, a challenge that would require all the patience, precision, and strategic thinking that her father had taught her years earlier. The classified briefing room on the third floor of Fort Braxton's main command building buzzed with tension as senior staff prepared for what would become known as Operation Summit Shield. Intelligence reports had confirmed that a coalition of hostile forces was massing near the borders of 3 allied nations in Eastern Europe, presenting a complex tactical challenge that would require immediate and decisive American intervention. General Patricia Hayes had arrived from Pentagon's Strategic Planning Division that morning, bringing with her a team of analysts and the authority to commit significant military resources to whatever operational plan proved most effective. Elena stood at the back of the briefing room, notepad in hand, officially present to provide logistical support, but effectively invisible to the decision-makers gathered around the large tactical display screen. She had spent the previous 72 hours analyzing every available piece of intelligence about the developing situation, identifying patterns and vulnerabilities that could prove crucial to mission success. Her preliminary assessment suggested that conventional response protocols would be insufficient for the unique challenges presented by this particular threat configuration. Colonel Thompson commanded the room's attention as he outlined his recommended approach to Operation Summit Shield. His strategy followed established doctrine for multi-front engagement scenarios, emphasizing overwhelming force projection and traditional supply line management. The plan called for deploying 3 separate task forces through predictable entry points, establishing forward operating bases according to standard defensive perimeters, and engaging hostile forces through coordinated frontal assaults designed to demonstrate American military superiority. Thompson's presentation was polished and professional, delivered with the confidence that came from decades of successful conventional operations. He highlighted the proven effectiveness of similar approaches in previous conflicts, emphasizing the importance of maintaining operational consistency with established NATO protocols. His timeline projected mission completion within 6 weeks, assuming optimal weather conditions and minimal unexpected resistance from enemy forces. Major Stephen Walsh provided supporting analysis for Thompson's plan, focusing on equipment requirements and personnel deployment schedules. Walsh's calculations suggested that the operation would require significant but manageable resource commitments, well within the capabilities of available American forces in the region. He projected casualty estimates that fell within acceptable parameters for operations of this scope and complexity, citing historical data from comparable missions conducted during the previous decade. General Hayes listened attentively to the presentations, occasionally asking clarifying questions about specific tactical elements or logistical considerations. Her experience with strategic planning was evident in the precision of her inquiries, each one designed to test particular assumptions underlying the proposed approach. Elena noticed that several of Hayes's questions touched on areas where her own analysis had identified potential complications that Thompson's plan did not adequately address. The briefing concluded with Thompson requesting formal approval to begin implementing preparation phases for his recommended strategy. Hayes indicated that she would review all available materials before making her final decision, but her tone suggested that Thompson's approach aligned closely with her own strategic preferences. The assembled officers began gathering their materials, clearly expecting that formal approval would be forthcoming within hours. Elena remained in her position at the back of the room as others filed out, debating internally whether to approach General Hayes with her alternative analysis. The classified nature of her previous successes meant that she could not reference her most compelling credentials, while Thompson's public dismissal of her capabilities made any intervention professionally risky. However, her detailed study of the intelligence reports had revealed tactical opportunities and potential complications that could significantly affect mission outcomes. Lieutenant Kim approached Elena as she lingered near the tactical displays, his expression indicating concern about the direction of the operational planning. "Have you had a chance to review the intelligence packages?" he asked quietly, ensuring that their conversation would not be overheard by the remaining senior staff. Elena nodded, confirming that she had indeed spent considerable time analyzing the available information about enemy force configurations and geographical challenges. "What did you think of the Colonel's approach?" Kim continued, though his tone suggested that he already suspected Elena had identified areas for improvement. Elena hesitated, aware that criticizing Thompson's strategy could be interpreted as insubordination, particularly given her current standing within the command hierarchy. However, Kim's technical background and analytical capabilities made him one of the few officers at Fort Braxton who might appreciate the subtleties of her alternative approach. Elena glanced around the briefing room to ensure they were alone before responding. The intelligence suggests some complications that weren't addressed in the formal presentation, she said carefully. The enemy force distribution indicates they're expecting conventional response protocols. There might be opportunities for alternative approaches that could achieve superior results with reduced resource requirements. Kim's interest was immediately evident. What kind of alternatives? He asked, moving closer to the tactical display where Elena had been studying the operational maps. Elena hesitated again, knowing that explaining her analysis would require revealing the depth of her independent research and potentially contradicting officially approved strategic assessments. The geographical features in the primary engagement zone create natural choke points that could be used to our advantage, Elena began, pointing to specific locations on the tactical map. Instead of establishing multiple forward operating bases, a single strategically positioned command center could provide better coordination, while presenting fewer targets for enemy counterattacks. She traced her finger along potential movement routes that diverged significantly from Thompson's proposed approach. Enemy communications intercepts suggest they're positioning their forces to counter traditional NATO deployment patterns. If we approached from unexpected directions using these secondary routes, we could potentially achieve tactical surprise while avoiding their primary defensive preparations. Kim studied the map carefully, his engineering background helping him appreciate the technical complexities Elena was describing. Have you developed detailed calculations for this alternative approach? He asked, though he suspected that Elena's analytical nature would have prompted her to work through all relevant variables. Elena nodded, retrieving a folder from her bag that contained dozens of pages of detailed tactical analysis. She had spent countless off-duty hours developing contingency plans for various scenarios, using publicly available information combined with her understanding of strategic principles to create comprehensive alternative approaches to potential military challenges. The current crisis had provided an opportunity to apply these theoretical frameworks to real-world circumstances. Resource requirements would be approximately 30% lower than the conventional approach, Elena explained, opening her folder to reveal charts and calculations supporting her analysis. Estimated completion time could be reduced to 4 weeks, with significantly lower projected casualty rates for American forces. Kim examined Elena's documentation with growing amazement. The level of detail exceeded what he had seen in many official strategic assessments, with careful consideration given to variables that conventional planning often overlooked. Elena had identified potential complications ranging from weather pattern impacts on supply line efficiency to cultural factors that could affect local civilian cooperation with American forces. "This is incredibly thorough," Kim said, though he kept his voice low to avoid attracting attention from officers who might still be within hearing range. "Have you presented any of this analysis to Colonel Thompson or General Hayes?" Elena's expression indicated the futility of such an approach. "Colonel Thompson has made his opinion of my strategic capabilities quite clear," she replied. "Presenting alternative analysis at this point would likely be interpreted as undermining approved operational plans." Kim understood the dilemma immediately. Elena's analysis appeared superior to the officially approved approach, but her position within Fort Braxton's hierarchy made it nearly impossible for her recommendations to receive serious consideration through normal channels. The institutional dynamics that had marginalized her expertise were now potentially compromising mission effectiveness and American service member safety. "General Hayes seems different from Colonel Thompson," Kim observed. She was asking detailed questions that suggested she might be receptive to alternative perspectives. Elena had noticed the same thing during the briefing, but she remained skeptical about the possibility of gaining Hayes's attention. "General Hayes is here to evaluate officially presented options," Elena replied. She's not going to consider unsolicited input from a captain whose immediate superior has already dismissed her analytical capabilities. Their conversation was interrupted by the arrival of Captain Lisa Chun, who had been attending the briefing as part of the intelligence coordination team. Chun approached them with obvious curiosity about their intense discussion near the tactical displays. "Are you two developing alternative strategies?" Chun asked with a slight smile that suggested she would welcome such initiative. Chun's background in intelligence analysis had given her appreciation for unconventional approaches to strategic challenges, and she had previously expressed frustration with the limitations of traditional planning methods. Elena and Kim exchanged glances, uncertain whether Chun's inquiry represented genuine interest or potential professional risk. Chun's position within the intelligence coordination team meant that she had access to classified information that could either support or contradict Elena's analytical conclusions. "Elena has developed some interesting observations about the operational environment," Kim said carefully, avoiding any direct criticism of approved plans while acknowledging the value of Elena's work. Chun's expression became more serious as she realized the implications of their discussion. "What kind of observations?" she asked, moving closer to examine the tactical displays that had captured their attention. Elena decided to trust Chun's apparent interest, recognizing that the intelligence analyst's expertise could provide valuable perspective on her strategic recommendations. She briefly outlined her analysis of enemy force positioning and the geographical advantages that alternative approaches might exploit. Chun listened intently, occasionally asking questions that demonstrated her familiarity with classified intelligence that Elena had not been authorized to access. As Elena described her proposed tactical modifications, Chun's expression shifted from curiosity to genuine concern about the implications of proceeding with conventional operational plans. "Some of your assumptions align closely with classified intelligence assessments," Chun said quietly. "There are elements of the enemy force configuration that weren't included in the general briefing materials." Elena felt a surge of validation, knowing that her analysis had identified patterns that were consistent with information available only to intelligence specialists. However, Chun's revelation also highlighted the limitations Elena faced in developing comprehensive strategic recommendations without access to complete intelligence packages. Would it be possible to share additional information that might refine the analysis? Elena asked, though she suspected that classification protocols would prevent Chun from providing detailed intelligence data to unauthorized personnel. Chun considered the request carefully, aware that sharing classified information with Elena would require justification through proper channels. However, she also recognized that Elena's analytical capabilities might prove valuable for mission planning if properly utilized. "I could request authorization to include you in expanded intelligence briefings," Chun suggested. "Your background in strategic analysis might qualify you for temporary security clearance upgrades if the request comes through appropriate command channels." The proposal offered Elena an opportunity to contribute meaningfully to operational planning, but it also presented significant professional risks. Requesting expanded access to classified information would require Colonel Thompson's approval, making it likely that Elena's alternative analysis would become known to the very officer who had consistently dismissed her strategic capabilities. Kim recognized Elena's dilemma immediately. "Is there a way to present the request that emphasizes Elena's analytical qualifications rather than questioning approved operational plans?" he asked Chun. Chun nodded, understanding the political sensitivities involved in their situation. "I could frame the request as supplementary analysis to support approved operations," she explained. General Hayes mentioned wanting comprehensive risk assessments for all tactical elements. Elena's background in strategic analysis could be presented as additional expertise for developing those assessments. The approach offered a potential path forward that might allow Elena's capabilities to contribute to mission success without directly challenging Thompson's authority. However, Elena remained concerned about the risks of drawing additional attention to herself when Thompson had already expressed displeasure with her independent research activities. What happens if Colonel Thompson refuses the request? Elena asked, knowing that such a refusal would effectively end any possibility of contributing to Operation Summit Shield planning. Then we proceed with approved plans and hope they prove adequate, Chun replied honestly. But if General Hayes truly wants comprehensive analysis, she might support including additional analytical resources regardless of local command preferences. Elena weighed her options carefully, recognizing that requesting expanded involvement in operational planning represented a significant professional gamble. Success could potentially restore her standing within Fort Braxton's command structure and demonstrate the value of her unconventional analytical approaches. Failure could confirm Thompson's assessment of her capabilities and further limit her future opportunities for meaningful assignments. Kim and Chun waited patiently as Elena considered her decision, both understanding the personal and professional stakes involved in her choice. The briefing room remained quiet except for the distant sounds of normal base operations, creating an atmosphere conducive to careful deliberation of potentially career-defining choices. Elena's thoughts returned to her father's advice about patience and precision in strategic thinking. Colonel James Rodriguez had taught her that the most effective military decisions combined careful analysis with decisive action when opportunities presented themselves. The current situation represented exactly the kind of opportunity he had described, a chance to prove her capabilities under circumstances where success could have lasting impact on her career and, more importantly, on mission outcomes that would affect American service members' safety. Request the expanded briefing access, Elena decided finally. If General Hayes wants comprehensive analysis, she should have access to the best analytical resources available. Chun nodded approvingly, already considering how to structure the request for maximum effectiveness. I'll prepare the documentation this afternoon and submit it through intelligence coordination channels, she said. The request should reach General Hayes within 24 hours. Kim voiced his support for Elena's decision, while acknowledging the professional risks it carried. Your analysis is stronger than what I've seen in the officially approved plans, he said. If General Hayes is truly focused on the mission's success, she sees the merit in having a wider range of analytical input. Elena appreciated his trust in her capabilities, though she remained grounded about the obstacles ahead. Even if her request for expanded access was granted, she'd still need to present her findings in a way that highlighted their value without appearing to challenge the chain of command. Navigating that delicate line between confidence and respect would demand every ounce of the diplomatic experience she'd gained throughout her service. As they left the briefing room, Elena reflected on the strange irony of her position. Her most significant success, still classified, was unknown to the very people now doubting her abilities. Meanwhile, her analytical skills were being dismissed by those unaware of the information that actually proved her competence. Still, the chance to contribute to Operation Summit Shield offered hope. Maybe this time, her results would speak louder than job titles or personal bias. Captain Chun left to begin drafting the formal request for her expanded access, while Kim stayed behind to review the technical aspects of her alternate strategy. Their conversation extended for another hour, during which Kim's engineering insights helped sharpen several parts of Elena's proposal. These logistical models are particularly sharp, Kim commented as he studied her data. You've pinpointed efficiency gains that could significantly reduce both time and resource usage, all while enhancing operational security. Elena smiled at the praise, grateful for the practical validation. Logistics often matter more than flashy strategy, she said. My father always said that wars are won by officers who understand supply chains as well as they understand weapon systems. Later that evening, Elena returned to her apartment in Fayetteville with a complex mix of hope and apprehension. Her request could open doors for meaningful contribution or confirm that her role at Fort Braxton would remain peripheral. Either way, the outcome would have lasting consequences for her career trajectory and future assignments. She spent the evening meticulously reviewing her work one final time, ensuring every data point was verified and every recommendation thoroughly supported. If granted access, she would have only a brief window to present her case before final decisions were locked in. Her analysis would have to be flawless both in content and delivery, if it was to overcome the systemic resistance she'd faced since arriving. The next morning brought an unexpected development that would fast-track everything. New intelligence indicated enemy forces were mobilizing faster than expected, pushing American response operations into a matter of days instead of weeks. The compressed timeline would increase pressure on the planning team, but might also create space for more efficient alternatives like Elena's to be considered. General Hayes's response to Chun's request came swiftly. Within 18 hours, Elena was ordered to attend an expanded intelligence briefing scheduled for 0600 the next morning. The speed of the approval hinted that Hayes may have been quietly seeking additional analytic support all along. Still, Elena knew that Thompson's reaction to her inclusion would be far from positive. She arrived at the secure facility half an hour early to go over her materials one last time. The briefing room Fort Braxton's most secure required biometric scans and special access codes. As Elena moved through the checkpoints, she was acutely aware of how different this felt compared to the countless times she'd sat quietly at the back of meetings, overlooked and underutilized. When she entered the room, Thompson's reaction was immediate and predictable, his jaw visibly clenched. He said nothing, but the displeasure was clear. Major Walsh leaned over and muttered something to him that deepened the frown. Other officers exchanged glances, confirming Elena's presence had already stirred behind-the-scenes discussion. General Hayes opened the session with a sobering update. The enemy had drastically accelerated their movements, and recent satellite intelligence pointed to an imminent threat against Allied positions. U.S. forces would need to deploy within 72 hours if there was any hope of intercepting the offensive and maintaining regional stability. Ladies and gentlemen, Hayes addressed the room, our window for detailed planning has closed. We must now act decisively and implement the most effective strategy available. Her eyes swept the room, pausing briefly on Elena before shifting to Thompson. I've brought in additional analytical support to ensure no viable option is overlooked before we commit to action. Thompson cleared his throat, his voice measured but tight with frustration. General, our existing plans are robust. They align with standard protocol and can be executed within the necessary time frame. While I respect the need for input, the current strategy is both aggressive and operationally sound. Hayes nodded acknowledgement of Thompson's position while maintaining her focus on the tactical displays, showing real-time intelligence updates. Colonel Thompson, your conventional approach provides an excellent foundation for our planning. However, the accelerated timeline and unique geographical challenges suggest we should examine alternative methodologies that might offer improved efficiency or reduced risk profiles. Elena felt the weight of expectations settling on her shoulders, as Hayes's comments made clear why her analytical expertise had been requested. The opportunity she had hoped for was materializing, but under circumstances that maximized both potential impact and professional risk. Thompson's expression indicated that he viewed her inclusion as a direct challenge to his authority and expertise. Captain Chun stepped forward to provide Elena with classified intelligence materials that had been withheld from general briefings. The additional information revealed enemy capabilities and positioning details that significantly Complicated conventional response options. Elena quickly scanned the documents, her analytical mind immediately identifying patterns that supported several of her preliminary assessments about tactical vulnerabilities and opportunities. Captain Rodriguez, Hayes addressed Elena directly. Captain Chun indicates you've been conducting independent analysis of this operational environment. Please share your findings with the group. Elena moved to the tactical display, acutely aware that every officer in the room was evaluating her competence and credibility. Thompson's skeptical expression made clear his expectation that her presentation would confirm his assessment of her limitations, while Hayes's attentive posture suggested genuine interest in alternative perspectives. General, the intelligence indicates that enemy forces are positioned to counter conventional NATO response protocols. Elena began, her voice steady despite the professional pressure she felt. Their defensive preparations focus on the three primary approach routes that standard doctrine would recommend for this type of engagement. She highlighted specific geographical features on the tactical display, showing how enemy positions created overlapping fields of fire that would complicate traditional advancement strategies. However, there are secondary approach routes that enemy planning appears to have discounted, possibly because they require different logistical and coordination methodologies than conventional forces typically employ. Elena traced alternative movement paths on the display, demonstrating how unconventional approach angles could potentially achieve tactical surprise while avoiding the most heavily defended positions. Her analysis incorporated detailed calculations about terrain challenges, supply line requirements, and coordination complexities that would be required for successful implementation of non-standard tactics. The key advantage of this alternative approach, Elena continued, is that it exploits enemy assumptions about American tactical preferences. Their positioning suggests they expect us to follow established deployment patterns that prioritize overwhelming force projection over tactical innovation. Thompson interrupted Elena's presentation with a tone that barely concealed his dismissal of her analysis. Captain Rodriguez, your theoretical approach ignores practical realities of managing large-scale military operations. These secondary routes you've identified present significant logistical challenges that could compromise mission effectiveness. Elena had anticipated Thompson's objection and prepared detailed responses to address practical implementation concerns. Colonel, I've calculated resource requirements for the alternative approach, including extended supply line management and specialized equipment needs. The total resource commitment would be approximately 25% lower than conventional deployment while achieving faster mission completion. She presented charts showing comparative analysis between traditional and alternative approaches, with detailed breakdowns of personnel requirements, equipment needs, timeline projections, and risk assessments. Elena's documentation demonstrated that her unconventional strategy was not merely theoretical speculation, but a carefully researched alternative supported by comprehensive logistical planning. Major Walsh joined Thompson's critique, focusing on potential complications that could arise from deviating from established tactical protocols. Captain Rodriguez, your analysis assumes optimal coordination between multiple units operating in unfamiliar terrain. Standard protocols exist because they provide predictable frameworks for managing complex operations under stress. Elena acknowledged Walsh's concern while presenting additional analysis that addressed coordination challenges. Major Walsh, I've developed detailed communication protocols that would support the alternative approach using existing equipment and training. The coordination requirements are different from standard operations, but not necessarily more complex. General Hayes observed the exchange with interest, occasionally asking clarifying questions that tested Elena's understanding of specific tactical elements. Elena's responses demonstrated not only thorough preparation, but also deep comprehension. of strategic principles that extended beyond theoretical knowledge to practical application. Captain Rodriguez, Hayes inquired, "What is your assessment of potential complications if enemy forces adapt more quickly than your timeline anticipates?" Elena had considered this possibility extensively during her independent analysis. General, the alternative approach includes multiple contingency protocols that allow for tactical adjustment without compromising overall operational effectiveness. The flexibility inherent in unconventional methods actually provides better adaptation capabilities than rigid conventional frameworks. Thompson's frustration became increasingly evident as Elena's presentation continued to address concerns with detailed responses and supporting documentation. His initial expectation that Elena would demonstrate her limitations was being contradicted by the quality and thoroughness of her analytical work. "General Hayes," Thompson said, his tone becoming more assertive, "implementing untested strategies during crisis situations violates fundamental principles of military planning." Captain Rodriguez's academic approach may seem innovative, but it lacks the practical validation that comes from actual combat experience. Elena felt the personal nature of Thompson's attack, but maintained her professional composure. "Colonel Thompson, my recommendations are based on established strategic principles adapted to the specific circumstances of this operation. The methodologies I'm proposing have theoretical foundations in documented successful operations, even if the specific combination hasn't been implemented previously." Hayes intervened before the exchange could escalate further. "Gentlemen, I appreciate both perspectives. Colonel Thompson's emphasis on proven methods reflects sound military judgment, while Captain Rodriguez's analysis provides valuable alternative insights that merit consideration." The general's diplomatic response temporarily diffused the tension while making clear that Elena's analytical contribution was being taken seriously. However, Elena understood that Hayes's ultimate decision would depend on her ability to demonstrate superior practical effectiveness rather than merely theoretical innovation. Lieutenant Kim had been observing the briefing from his position near the intelligence coordination station, and Hayes called upon him to provide technical assessment of Elena's proposed communication protocols. Kim's engineering background enabled him to evaluate the feasibility of Elena's coordination requirements with authority that other officers respected. "General," Kim reported, "Captain Rodriguez's communication protocols are technically sound and compatible with existing equipment configurations. Implementation would require modified training procedures, but no significant technological upgrades or procurement delays." Kim's validation provided crucial technical credibility for Elena's alternative approach, though Thompson remained visibly skeptical about the wisdom of implementing unconventional strategies under current time pressures. The dynamic in the briefing room had shifted from dismissive evaluation of Elena's capabilities to serious consideration of competing strategic options. Captain Chen contributed intelligence analysis that supported several of Elena's key assumptions about enemy positioning and tactical expectations. Captain Rodriguez's assessment of enemy defensive preparations aligns closely with classified intercepts indicating their anticipation of conventional response patterns. Chen reported to Hayes, "The intelligence confirmation strengthened Elena's credibility while highlighting potential vulnerabilities in Thompson's conventional approach." Elena noticed Hayes taking detailed notes during Chen's presentation, suggesting that the general was seriously evaluating the strategic implications of intelligence that supported alternative tactical options. Major Walsh attempted to regain initiative for Thompson's conventional strategy by emphasizing timeline pressures and implementation challenges. "General, even if Captain Rodriguez's analysis has merit, the compressed schedule makes it inadvisable to attempt complex modifications to established operational frameworks. We need strategies that can be implemented immediately using existing training and preparation." Elena recognized that Walsh's timeline argument represented a significant challenge to her alternative approach, requiring her to demonstrate that unconventional methods could actually be implemented more quickly than conventional alternatives under current circumstances. Major Walsh raises an important point about implementation speed, Elena acknowledged before presenting additional analysis. However, my alternative approach actually requires less initial preparation than conventional deployment because it utilizes smaller, more flexible unit configurations that can be organized and deployed more rapidly than large-scale conventional forces. Elena's timeline analysis showed that her alternative strategy could achieve operational readiness 6 to 8 hours faster than Thompson's conventional approach, primarily because it avoided the complex coordination requirements inherent in managing multiple large unit deployments simultaneously. Thompson's expression reflected his growing realization that Elena's presentation was far more substantial and credible than he had anticipated. Her analytical work demonstrated professional competence that contradicted his public assessments of her capabilities, creating an increasingly uncomfortable situation for his leadership credibility. Hayes concluded the briefing session by requesting detailed written analysis from both Thompson and Elena within 12 hours. Colonel Thompson, please provide comprehensive implementation timelines and resource requirements for your conventional approach. Captain Rodriguez, I want detailed operational protocols and contingency planning for your alternative strategy. The directive represented formal recognition that Elena's analysis merited equal consideration with Thompson's established conventional approach. For Elena, it represented vindication of months of marginalization and dismissal of her analytical capabilities. For Thompson, it represented an unexpected challenge to his operational authority from an officer he had publicly dismissed as incompetent. As officers filed out of the briefing room, Elena found herself surrounded by colleagues who had previously maintained professional distance. Several senior officers approached her with questions about specific elements of her analysis, while others expressed surprise at the depth and quality of her strategic thinking. Captain Chun congratulated Elena on her presentation while acknowledging the professional risks involved in challenging established command preferences. You handled Thompson's criticism professionally while defending your analysis effectively, Chun observed. General Hayes clearly recognizes the value of your alternative perspective. Lieutenant Kim expressed enthusiasm for Elena's approach while acknowledging the implementation challenges that would need to be addressed if Hayes selected the unconventional strategy. Your analysis is superior from a technical perspective, Kim told Elena, but convincing senior command to implement untested methods will require exceptional execution during the implementation phase. Elena understood Kim's point completely. Receiving approval for her alternative approach would represent only the first step toward proving its effectiveness. Successful implementation would require flawless execution under combat conditions, with no margin for error that could validate Thompson's skepticism about unconventional methods. Thompson departed the briefing room without acknowledging Elena directly, though his interaction with Major Walsh suggested intense discussion about responding to the unexpected challenge Elena's analysis represented. Elena realized that the next 12 hours would determine not only the operational strategy for the current crisis but also her future standing within Fort Braxton's command structure. Elena spent the remainder of the day refining her written analysis, ensuring that every detail of her alternative operational plan was documented with precision that would withstand the most rigorous scrutiny. She understood that Hayes's decision would likely depend on the quality and completeness of the comparative analysis she submitted. Working late into the evening, Elena incorporated additional intelligence that Chun had provided, adjusting her tactical recommendations to reflect the most current understanding of enemy capabilities and positioning. Her final document represented months of theoretical preparation applied to real-world circumstances with potentially life and death implications for American service members. As Elena completed her submission, she reflected on the dramatic change in her professional circumstances. Over the past 48 hours, the marginalized analyst who had been assigned to routine administrative duties was now competing directly with Fort Braxton's commanding officer for approval of strategic recommendations that could determine the outcome of a critical military operation. The emergency session convened at 0500 hours in Fort Braxton's secure command center carried an atmosphere of barely controlled urgency. Overnight intelligence reports had revealed that enemy forces were beginning active engagement against Allied positions, transforming what had been a planning exercise into an immediate operational crisis. Elena stood at attention alongside the other senior staff, watching as General Hayes reviewed final strategic recommendations under the harsh, fluorescent lighting that made everyone's face appear pale and strained. "Ladies and gentlemen, we have confirmation that hostile action has commenced in Sector 7, Hayes announced, her voice cutting through the tension that filled the room. American forces will deploy within 6 hours to support coalition partners who are currently under direct assault. The strategy we implement today will determine whether this engagement escalates into a broader regional conflict or remains contained to current operational boundaries." Elena felt her heart rate increase as she realized that her alternative operational plan might actually be implemented under live combat conditions. The theoretical analysis she had developed over months of independent research would either prove its effectiveness against real enemy forces or fail catastrophically in circumstances where American lives hung in the balance. Colonel Thompson stepped forward with visible confidence, carrying a leather portfolio containing his finalized conventional operational plan. "General Hayes, our traditional deployment strategy has been refined to address the compressed timeline, while maintaining the overwhelming force superiority that has proven effective in similar engagements." Thompson's presentation proceeded smoothly through established protocols for multi-unit coordination, supply line management, and tactical advancement sequences. His plan called for deploying mechanized infantry through 3 primary corridors, supported by artillery units positioned according to standard defensive doctrine. The approach emphasized maximum firepower and coordinated movement patterns that had been successfully employed during previous NATO operations. Implementation can commence immediately using existing personnel assignments and equipment configurations, Thompson concluded. "Our forces will achieve operational readiness within 4 hours and begin engagement sequences designed to overwhelm enemy positions through sustained pressure." Hayes nodded acknowledgement of Thompson's comprehensive presentation before turning her attention to Elena. "Captain Rodriguez, please present your alternative analysis." Elena moved to the tactical display with measured steps, acutely aware that dozens of officers were evaluating not only her strategic recommendations but also her composure under the most intense professional pressure of her military career. The classified intelligence materials spread across the display showed real-time enemy positions that would determine whether her unconventional approach could succeed against actual combat conditions. "General, overnight intelligence confirms that enemy forces have positioned themselves to counter traditional NATO engagement patterns," Elena began, her voice steady despite the magnitude of the moment. "Their defensive configurations create overlapping kill zones along the 3 primary approach routes that conventional doctrine would recommend." Elena highlighted specific enemy positions on the tactical display, demonstrating how hostile forces had anticipated American tactical preferences with remarkable accuracy. However, the enemy's defensive preparations reveal a critical vulnerability that our intelligence analysis has identified. She traced movement patterns on the display that diverged significantly from conventional approach routes, showing how unconventional positioning could exploit gaps in enemy defensive coverage. By approaching through these secondary corridors, using smaller, more flexible unit configurations, American forces can achieve tactical surprise while avoiding the most heavily fortified enemy positions. Elena's presentation incorporated detailed calculations showing how her alternative approach would require 30% fewer personnel while achieving mission objectives in significantly less time. The key strategic advantage is that enemy forces have prepared for conventional engagement, while leaving these alternative approach routes relatively undefended. Thompson interrupted Elena's presentation with obvious skepticism. "Captain Rodriguez, your theoretical calculations ignore the practical realities of coordinating complex maneuvers under combat stress. These secondary routes present significant terrain challenges that could compromise operational effectiveness when forces encounter unexpected resistance." Elena had anticipated Thompson's objection and prepared detailed responses addressing practical implementation concerns. "Colonel Thompson, I've developed specific protocols for managing terrain challenges while maintaining unit coordination. The communication systems required for this approach have been tested and validated by Lieutenant Kim's technical analysis." Lieutenant Kim stepped forward to provide supporting technical assessment of Elena's coordination requirements. "Colonel Thompson, Captain Rodriguez's communication protocols utilize existing equipment configurations with modified deployment patterns that actually improve redundancy and operational security." Kim's technical validation provided crucial credibility for Elena's unconventional approach, though Thompson remained visibly skeptical about implementing untested strategies under current time pressures. Major Walsh joined Thompson's critique by emphasizing potential complications that could arise from deviating from established tactical frameworks. "General Hayes," Walsh interjected, "standard protocols exist because they provide predictable coordination mechanisms for managing complex operations under combat stress. Captain Rodriguez's alternative approach introduces variables that could compromise mission effectiveness if unexpected complications arise." Elena acknowledged Walsh's concern while presenting additional analysis that addressed coordination challenges under various contingency scenarios. "Major Walsh, the alternative approach includes multiple fallback protocols that provide tactical flexibility if circumstances change during implementation. The unconventional methods actually offer better adaptation capabilities than rigid conventional frameworks." General Hayes observed the exchange with intense focus, occasionally asking questions that tested Elena's understanding of specific tactical elements. Elena's responses demonstrated comprehensive preparation and deep understanding of strategic principles that extended beyond theoretical knowledge to practical combat applications. "Captain Rodriguez," Hayes inquired, "what is your assessment of casualties if enemy forces prove more adaptable than your analysis anticipates?" Elena's response reflected careful consideration of various risk scenarios. "General, the alternative approach minimizes American exposure to enemy fire by avoiding their primary defensive preparations. Even if enemy forces adapt quickly, our tactical positioning would remain superior to conventional approaches that advance directly into prepared defensive positions." Thompson's frustration became increasingly apparent as Elena continued to address concerns with detailed responses and supporting documentation. His expectation that Elena would demonstrate her limitations under pressure was being contradicted by the quality and thoroughness of her strategic analysis. "General Hayes," Thompson said, his tone becoming more assertive, "implementing experimental strategies during active combat situations violates fundamental principles of military planning. Captain Rodriguez's academic approach may appear innovative, but it lacks validation through actual combat experience." Elena maintained her professional composure despite the personal nature of Thompson's criticism. "Colonel Thompson, my recommendations apply established strategic principles to the specific circumstances of this engagement. The methodologies have theoretical foundations and documented successful operations, adapted to exploit intelligence Advantages we currently possess. Captain Chun provided additional intelligence analysis that supported Elena's key assumptions about enemy tactical expectations. General Hayes intercepted enemy communications, indicate their preparation for conventional NATO response patterns. Captain Rodriguez's assessment of their defensive vulnerabilities aligns with classified intelligence, suggesting significant gaps in their alternative approach coverage. The intelligence confirmation strengthened Elena's credibility while highlighting potential weaknesses in Thompson's conventional strategy. Hayes took detailed notes during Chun's presentation, indicating serious evaluation of intelligence that supported unconventional tactical options. Hayes called for a brief recess to review documentation from both strategic approaches. During the intermission, Elena found herself approached by officers who had previously maintained professional distance due to Thompson's public dismissal of her capabilities. Several senior staff members expressed surprise at the depth and sophistication of her strategic analysis. Captain Rodriguez, commented Colonel Williams from the Logistics Coordination Team, "Your resource calculations are remarkably detailed. The efficiency improvements you've identified could have applications beyond this immediate operation." Lieutenant Kim used the break to discuss technical implementation details with Elena, ensuring that all communication protocols were thoroughly understood before potential deployment. "Your coordination requirements are actually simpler than conventional approaches in several key areas," Kim observed. "The technological demands are well within our current capabilities." Captain Chun approached Elena with additional classified intelligence that had arrived during the presentation. "Recent intercepts confirm enemy positioning that directly supports your tactical assumptions," Chun reported quietly. "Their defensive preparations focus almost exclusively on conventional approach routes." Elena felt a mixture of validation and increased pressure as intelligence confirmation supported her strategic analysis. The accuracy of her assessments increased confidence in her unconventional approach, while raising stakes for successful implementation if Hayes approved her recommendations. Thompson spent the recess in intense consultation with Major Walsh and other senior officers who supported conventional operational approaches. Their discussion appeared focused on emphasizing implementation risks associated with Elena's alternative strategy while reinforcing advantages of proven conventional methods. When the session reconvened, Hayes addressed both officers with formal gravity that reflected the magnitude of decisions being made. "Colonel Thompson, Captain Rodriguez, I've reviewed your strategic recommendations, along with supporting intelligence analysis. Both approaches offer distinct advantages and potential complications." Hayes paused momentarily before continuing, her expression giving no indication of her preliminary assessment. "Colonel Thompson, your conventional approach provides operational predictability and utilizes established coordination frameworks that minimize implementation risks. Captain Rodriguez, your alternative strategy offers potential tactical advantages while requiring modified coordination protocols." Elena felt the weight of anticipation as Hayes prepared to announce her decision. The general's expression remained neutral, providing no indication of whether Elena's unconventional approach had been deemed credible enough for implementation under actual combat conditions. Given the intelligence indicating enemy preparation for conventional NATO responses, Hayes continued, "I'm authorizing implementation of Captain Rodriguez's alternative operational plan with modifications to address coordination concerns raised." During this briefing, Elena felt a surge of validation mixed with overwhelming responsibility as she realized that her strategic recommendations would be tested under actual combat conditions. The theoretical analysis she had developed during months of independent research would now determine outcomes for American forces engaging real enemy positions. Thompson's expression reflected professional disappointment and personal frustration at having his conventional approach rejected in favor of Elena's unconventional strategy. His response, however, remained within professional boundaries despite obvious displeasure with Hayes's decision. "General Hayes," Thompson said formally, "I respectfully request documentation of my objections to implementing untested strategies under current operational circumstances." Hayes acknowledged Thompson's request while making clear that operational authority had been transferred to Elena for strategy implementation. "Colonel Thompson, your objections will be noted in official records. Captain Rodriguez will serve as primary strategic coordinator for this operation with full authority to implement her recommended tactical approach." Elena stepped forward to accept operational responsibility, understanding that success or failure of the engagement would determine not only mission outcomes, but also the future credibility of unconventional strategic thinking within American military planning. The pressure was immense, but her confidence in the analytical work gave her determination to prove that innovative approaches could achieve superior results. "General Hayes," Elena responded formally, "I accept operational authority and request immediate access to all tactical resources required for implementing the alternative strategy." Hayes nodded approval before addressing the assembled staff. "Ladies and gentlemen, Captain Rodriguez will coordinate strategy implementation with support from all relevant departments. Timeline for deployment remains at 6 hours with operational commencement scheduled for 1200 hours. The briefing concluded with Elena suddenly finding herself at the center of intense operational activity as officers approached with questions about implementation details. Lieutenant Kim immediately began coordinating technical aspects of the modified communication protocols, while Captain Chun provided ongoing intelligence updates to support tactical decision-making. Thompson departed the command center with Major Walsh, their expressions indicating continued skepticism about the wisdom of implementing Elena's unconventional approach. However, professional protocol required their compliance with Hayes's operational directive, regardless of personal reservations. About strategic effectiveness, Elena spent the following hours coordinating implementation details with remarkable efficiency. Her months of theoretical preparation, enabling rapid translation of strategic concepts into practical operational orders. Unit commanders received detailed briefings about modified tactical approaches, while logistics personnel organized equipment and supply arrangements according to Elena's resource calculations. The transformation in Elena's professional status was dramatic and immediate. Officers who had previously dismissed her analytical capabilities now sought her guidance on tactical details, while senior staff members who had maintained professional distance began treating her with the respect accorded to proven strategic leaders. As deployment preparations intensified, Elena maintained constant communication with field commanders who would be implementing her tactical recommendations under actual combat conditions. Her confidence in the strategic analysis was balanced by acute awareness that theoretical success meant nothing if practical implementation failed under enemy fire. General Hayes observed Elena's coordination activities with obvious approval, noting the efficiency and precision with which she managed complex operational details. "Captain Rodriguez," Hayes commented during a brief consultation, "your implementation protocols demonstrate the same analytical rigor evident in your strategic planning." Elena appreciated Hayes's confidence while remaining focused on operational details that would determine mission success. The next 6 hours would either validate her unconventional approach through successful engagement outcomes or confirm Thompson's skepticism through tactical failure under combat conditions. As American forces prepared for deployment using Elena's alternative strategy, intelligence reports continued confirming enemy positioning that supported her tactical assumptions. The convergence of theoretical analysis with real-world circumstances suggested that Elena's months of independent research had produced strategic insights with genuine practical value. Elena's transformation from marginalized analyst to operational Coordinator represented vindication of capabilities that had been systematically dismissed by institutional prejudices. However, true validation would come only through successful implementation of her strategic recommendations under the ultimate test of actual combat engagement. The first reports from the field arrived 3 hours after deployment, crackling through secure communication channels with updates that would determine whether Elena's unconventional strategy would be remembered as brilliant innovation or catastrophic miscalculation. Elena stood beside General Hayes in Fort Braxton's command center, monitoring real-time tactical displays that showed American forces advancing through the secondary corridors she had identified during her months of independent analysis. Alpha Team reporting minimal resistance along approach Vector 7. Came the voice of Major Jackson, field commander of the lead reconnaissance unit. Enemy defensive positions appear concentrated along primary routes as predicted. Request permission to proceed with Phase 2 advancement. Elena felt a surge of relief mixed with cautious optimism as initial intelligence confirmed her strategic assessment of enemy positioning. The hostile forces had indeed prepared their defenses according to conventional NATO tactical expectations, leaving the alternative approach routes relatively unprotected as her analysis had suggested. General Hayes nodded approval for continued advancement while maintaining her focus on incoming intelligence reports. Major Jackson, proceed with Phase 2 but maintain heightened alert status. Intelligence suggests enemy forces may attempt tactical adjustment once they recognize our unconventional approach patterns. Lieutenant Kim monitored technical communications from his position at the coordination station, ensuring that Elena's modified protocols were functioning effectively under actual combat conditions. Communication systems operating at optimal efficiency, Kim reported. Unit coordination is proceeding smoothly with response times actually improving compared to conventional frameworks. Elena's confidence in her strategic approach grew as field reports continued confirming tactical advantages she had calculated during her theoretical analysis. American forces were achieving objectives ahead of schedule while encountering significantly less resistance than Thompson's conventional plan had projected for comparable advancement phases. Captain Chun provided ongoing intelligence updates that supported Elena's assessment of enemy tactical vulnerabilities. Intercepted communications indicate enemy confusion about American force positioning, Chun reported. Their command structure appears to be scrambling to adjust defensive preparations that were optimized for conventional engagement patterns. The tactical displays showed American units advancing through terrain features that Elena had identified as providing optimal cover while maintaining strategic flexibility. Her detailed analysis of geographical advantages was proving accurate under actual combat conditions, with field commanders reporting improved operational security compared to what conventional approaches would have provided. Colonel Thompson observed the unfolding operation from his position near the intelligence coordination area, his expression reflecting reluctant acknowledgement that Elena's unconventional strategy was achieving superior results compared to his conventional recommendations. Major Walsh stood beside Thompson, both officers maintaining professional composure, despite obvious surprise at the effectiveness of Elena's tactical innovations. Bravo team reporting successful neutralization of enemy forward positions, announced Captain Morrison from the field. Resistance levels significantly lower than projected. Enemy forces appear to have been caught off guard by our approach vectors. Elena felt validation as field reports confirmed that her months of theoretical preparation had translated effectively into practical tactical advantages. The unconventional strategy was not only working, but actually exceeding performance projections she had developed during her independent research. General Hayes turned to Elena with obvious approval. Captain Rodriguez, your strategic assessment appears to be proving accurate under combat conditions. Field commanders are reporting advancement. rates approximately 40% faster than conventional timeline projections. Elena maintained her professional focus while feeling deep satisfaction at having her analytical capabilities finally recognized through successful operational outcomes. General Hayes, the tactical advantages should continue as long as enemy forces remain committed to defensive positions optimized for conventional NATO responses. As the operation progressed into its fourth hour, Elena coordinated tactical adjustments based on real-time intelligence updates, demonstrating the adaptive flexibility that she had emphasized as a key advantage of her unconventional approach. Her ability to modify strategic elements based on evolving circumstances proved superior to the rigid frameworks that characterized traditional operational planning. Charlie team requesting tactical modification to approach sequence, reported Lieutenant Colonel Davis from an advanced position. Intelligence indicates opportunity for accelerated advancement if we adjust coordination protocols as discussed. During briefing, Elena quickly analyzed the tactical situation and approved the requested modification, showcasing the responsive decision-making capabilities that her alternative strategy had been designed to support. The ability to make rapid tactical adjustments while maintaining overall strategic coherence demonstrated advantages of flexible planning frameworks over conventional rigid approaches. Captain Chun provided intelligence confirmation that enemy forces were beginning tactical withdrawal from primary defensive positions. Enemy communications indicate recognition that their prepared defenses are ineffective against our approach patterns, Chun reported. They appear to be attempting redeployment to secondary positions. Elena had anticipated this possibility during her strategic planning and had developed contingency protocols for managing enemy tactical adjustments. All units implement containment protocols as briefed, Elena instructed field commanders. Enemy withdrawal patterns should align with projected scenarios outlined in contingency planning materials. The tactical displays showed enemy forces moving exactly as Elena's analysis had predicted, validating her understanding of how hostile commanders would likely respond when confronted with unexpected American tactical approaches. Her strategic planning had included detailed assessment of enemy decision-making patterns based on intelligence about their training and operational philosophies. Lieutenant Kim reported continued optimal performance of Elena's modified communication systems. Coordination efficiency remains approximately 30% above conventional baseline measurements, Kim announced. Field commanders are expressing appreciation for improved information flow and tactical flexibility. Elena's strategic innovations were proving successful across multiple operational dimensions, from tactical advancement rates to communication effectiveness to resource utilization efficiency. The comprehensive nature of her alternative approach was demonstrating advantages that extended beyond her initial analytical projections. General Hayes received updates from Pentagon Strategic Planning Division expressing interest in Elena's tactical methodologies based on preliminary field reports. Captain Rodriguez, General Hayes said, turning to Elena, Senior Command has requested a full report on your strategic innovations. They're considering integrating your work into future training protocols. Elena felt a wave of validation. The strategy she had developed often in isolation and underappreciated during her time at Fort Braxton were now drawing attention at the highest levels of military planning. What had started as theory developed in the margins was now influencing the direction of broader doctrine. Delta Team reports successful completion of objectives ahead of schedule, Major Thompson announced over the field channel. Enemy resistance collapsed following strategic withdrawals. No American casualties, equipment losses are minimal. The mission results were exceeding even Elena's most hopeful projections. Her unconventional strategy had not only met its goals, it had done so more efficiently and safely than traditional planning had predicted possible. The data made one thing clear: her approach worked. As the operational reports continued to confirm the strategy's effectiveness, Colonel Thompson approached Elena directly. "Captain Rodriguez," he said with a tone of formality, "your analysis has outperformed the standard methods under these conditions. You've proven the value of your approach." Elena appreciated the recognition but remained focused on her duties. "Thank you, Colonel." The mission's success was a collective effort. Every team involved played a role in making this strategy work. Though brief, Thompson's acknowledgement marked a shift in their dynamic. Still, Elena knew that real institutional change would require repeated, consistent success proof that alternative thinking wasn't just a lucky outlier, but a repeatable asset. As the operational phase drew to a close, General Hayes addressed the assembled officers. Today's mission was a decisive success, accomplished through innovative tactical thinking. Captain Rodriguez's strategic contributions exceeded what traditional planning could have achieved. She turned to Elena with a measured nod. "Captain, I'll be recommending your immediate reassignment to the Pentagon Strategic Planning Division. Your insights belong at the core of how we shape our doctrine. This kind of thinking is exactly what our future operations demand." Elena felt a deep sense of satisfaction. What had once been frustration and sidelining at Fort Braxton was now giving way to professional validation at the national level. Her ideas were being recognized, not just tolerated, but sought out. Lieutenant Kim offered his congratulations, clearly energized by the possibilities ahead. "Your methods could be transformative," he said. "This isn't just a victory, it's a potential turning point in how we approach a wide range of military problems." Captain Chun joined them with fresh intelligence reports. "We're already seeing ripple effects," he said. "Enemy forces in nearby regions are adjusting their tactics after realizing we've adopted unconventional strategies. Your work has changed more than just this mission. It's reshaping how they perceive American capability." The operations success was producing outcomes far beyond Fort Braxton. Elena's tactics were influencing not just one battle, but potentially the strategy of adversaries across multiple regions. Even Major Walsh, once a vocal skeptic aligned with Thompson, approached Elena with a new attitude. "Captain Rodriguez, your analysis under pressure was exceptional. I was wrong to judge without fully understanding your background. You have my respect and my apology." Elena accepted his words graciously, aware of the deeper implications. Her journey had revealed just how often institutional politics and assumptions could prevent valuable insights from being heard. It had nearly cost the operation its end, reminded her of the urgent need for open-mindedness in leadership. General Hayes concluded the debrief by announcing that Elena's strategies would be immediately incorporated into revised officer training materials. "Captain Rodriguez's tactical innovations will be included in our standard doctrine for operations in comparable environments," she said. It was official. What had once been considered unorthodox was now becoming policy. Elena's research and strategic vision were no longer theoretical. They were being codified into the future of U.S. military practice. As operations wrapped up, officers who had once dismissed her were now eager to engage, asking questions, requesting insights, seeking her guidance on strategic planning. The transformation in her professional standing was remarkable. Colonel Williams from Logistics approached with a handshake. "Captain, your resource optimization models have applications far beyond combat. We could see operational improvements across logistics, supply chains, even base management. This is more than tactics, it's a framework." Elena appreciated the recognition while remaining focused on continued development of her strategic capabilities. "Colonel Williams, the analytical frameworks I've developed can be adapted to various operational challenges. The key principle is thorough analysis of specific circumstances rather than automatic application of conventional approaches." Elena's success had demonstrated that innovative strategic thinking could produce superior results when applied with appropriate analytical rigor, and professional discipline. Her vindication provided validation not only for her personal capabilities, but also for the value of encouraging unconventional perspectives within military planning institutions. General Hayes concluded the day's activities with formal commendation of Elena's strategic achievement and announcement of her immediate promotion to Major. Major Rodriguez's analytical excellence and strategic innovation represent the highest standards of military professionalism, Hayes announced to the assembled staff. Elena accepted her promotion with gratitude while reflecting on the remarkable transformation in her professional circumstances. The marginalized analyst who had been assigned to routine administrative duties was now being recognized as a strategic innovator whose methodologies would influence military doctrine development. As evening settled over Fort Braxton, Elena found herself in the same command center where Colonel Thompson had dismissed her battle plan just days earlier. The contrast between her current recognition and her previous marginalization highlighted how institutional dynamics could either suppress or support analytical excellence depending on leadership attitudes and organizational culture. Lieutenant Kim joined Elena as she reviewed final operational reports, both officers reflecting on the successful demonstration of unconventional strategic thinking under demanding circumstances. Your achievement today will influence military planning for years to come, Kim observed. You've proven that innovative approaches can produce superior results when supported by rigorous analysis. Elena smiled at Kim's assessment while maintaining perspective about the broader implications of her success. The real achievement is proving that military effectiveness improves when organizations remain open to unconventional perspectives, Elena replied. Today's success reflects collaborative support from everyone who contributed to implementing alternative approaches. Captain Chun approached with final intelligence reports, confirming the broader strategic impact of Elena's tactical innovation. Regional intelligence indicates that enemy forces are fundamentally reassessing their defensive planning based on awareness of American unconventional capabilities, Chun reported. Your strategic success has created lasting tactical advantages for future operations. Elena's vindication was complete as she realized that her analytical work had produced strategic advantages extending far beyond immediate operational success. Her unconventional approaches had proven superior to conventional alternatives while demonstrating the value of encouraging innovative thinking within military planning institutions. Colonel Thompson made a final approach to Elena as operational activities concluded for the day. Major Rodriguez, Thompson said formally, your strategic excellence has been demonstrated beyond any reasonable doubt. I regret that institutional dynamics prevented earlier recognition of your analytical capabilities. Elena accepted Thompson's acknowledgement with professional grace while understanding that systemic changes would be required to prevent similar dismissal of analytical excellence in future circumstances. Colonel Thompson, today's success demonstrates the importance of evaluating strategic recommendations based on analytical merit rather than conventional expectations. Thompson nodded agreement with Elena's assessment while clearly reflecting on how his institutional prejudices had nearly prevented superior strategic approaches from receiving appropriate consideration. Your experience highlights the need for military institutions to remain open to unconventional perspectives that can produce superior operational outcomes. As Elena prepared to depart Fort Braxton for her new assignment at Pentagon's Strategic Planning Division, she reflected on the remarkable journey from marginalized analyst to recognized strategic innovator. Her father's advice about patience and precision had proven prophetic as careful analytical preparation had ultimately overcome institutional resistance to produce meaningful professional vindication. General Hayes provided Elena with final guidance as she prepared for expanded strategic responsibilities. Major Rodriguez, your analytical capabilities and innovative thinking represent exactly the kind of strategic excellence that modern military challenges require. Your future contributions will influence American military effectiveness for decades to come. Elena felt profound satisfaction as she realized that her analytical capabilities would finally receive appropriate recognition and utilization within institutions designed to support strategic innovation. The marginalization and dismissal she had experienced at Fort Braxton was being replaced by opportunities for meaningful contribution to military doctrine development at the highest levels. The quiet analyst who had been systematically underestimated had proven that precision, patience, and analytical excellence could overcome institutional prejudices to produce strategic innovations that enhanced American military effectiveness. Elena's success demonstrated that the most valuable strategic insights often came from unexpected sources when organizations remained open to unconventional thinking. Her battle plan had indeed become the new standard doctrine, proving that sometimes the most important victories are won not through overwhelming force, but through the quiet persistence of analytical excellence combined with the courage to challenge conventional wisdom when superior alternatives exist. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out.